Yeah, it didn't work out what I just did, but the thing is this, like when I think of posting the India video, I know that on the other end, whatever do you mean, sir? In other words, like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to make a video that is like, you'd have to. There's a lot of stuff that comes out where someone's trying to ring the alarm bell about something, but it's the way it's described makes the viewer or the reader or whatever like perceive it some kind of like complaint against capitalism or something like they did not. That's the part that I've always been preoccupied with, how to break through to people who are like right there. They're not sort of catching the specifics of things, so they perceive what's being brought to them wrong. So I don't know. He's saying, what's this guy saying? Something about our corporations in India. Oh, I guess they're sort of anti, capitalist. So, how or what is it? Like, I mean, people would tend to be not sort of absorb the information in such a video because like they don't really know what the person meant, because there's nothing like sort of specific mention, so it just sounds like the usual. You know, like, you know what I mean. And I know how much, believe it, it's hard that we made the thing about a lot of like what's being called conservatism like has to do with this attitude of like being kind of in a cult with other people who are like don't who are like if it's like, oh, I don't know, this individual is like saying something about corporations, like, yeah, there are such people, like we shouldn't listen to this, like he's some person who's he doesn't like the corporations. Like, I mean, like they don't like when knowing who's out there in the public and like knowing like in some sense when I was younger I was like one of them. In the sense of like sensing things in this certain way. I wonder. I wished I could add more information that would break through that. It's kind of like when they occupied. I mean, people occupying the financial districts in several major cities. The time I landed in New Orleans, I mean, the occupation of the financial district was in New York, New Orleans, Boston, and then elsewhere. That to me, that was like a living through a moment in history, like how they're occupying all the financial districts, and the people doing it in New Orleans is very interesting to find out who is participating. I mean, certain types of people that you might not realize. Someone wouldn't think, it's interesting. But I mean, I thought like, oh, geez, I could add a dimension to that, because otherwise, what's the point in just saying? I guess I did say go check out like Vandana Shiva's like website or whatever. But I know people have blocks on things like that. They have psychological blocks against them. I don't know. Part of the sort of like sorrows of young Werther over here is that I'm always like, the one thing I'm aware of is the way in which people are blocked from sort of like hearing certain things unless they're already sensitive to it or know about it. But you don't want to make a video that's just like, oh, good, like someone made a video about that, like right on, like for someone who already knows. Whereas you'd want to reach people who like are prejudiced against such the things that sound like it's a big part of what's happening, because egos are out of control. I'm hearing this. I mean, it sounds like this to me. Then they turn off the video. It sounds like this. Sounds like something I don't get involved in. But adding specifics, but it's not to add specifics. It's to say like, I don't know. I do not know. It's the farmer suicides. I mean, when I say it's the farmer suicides, I mean it's like right, like you'd have to know that one particular meeting they were signing those agreements, but that was the multilateral agreement on trade and investment, like the thing in it that later led to 500,000 farmers committing suicide, was that empowered transnational corporations to also act as a lender. Like that would that's why. But you'd have to be a little more specific to understand why all those farmers were committing suicide. So like that's what was sort of my thought process. Like I had to like build a little more detail to the extent that I remember correctly. It's been a long time. I mean, I was introduced to those things. Like I'm not like reading off a pamphlet here. I mean, it was an earlier. It was a bit ago that I get the facts right. Well, but it's that kind of thing that people only get a general impression. Like you know what I mean? That there's no specifics in a video like that I made, and then that just goes into it's like talking to an echo chamber if you're trying to explain to someone who doesn't know about such things and is prejudiced against them. You don't want to talk to the already. You don't want to especially talk to people who know more than I do about it, because that's the main thing with like activists. Like I wasn't that. I was a creative writer, so they know more about it than I do. But you wouldn't want it to just be like, oh, good, that guy who's like in a game or like whatever is like sort of like limited awareness, but like does his best to like finally say something about that. It's like, oh, good. I mean, you don't want that. You want someone who doesn't know about such things to like understand. But I know the blocks to understanding because I didn't understand one time either because I was younger and preoccupied with other things and had, you know what I mean? That's all my intentions were. I'll be quiet and just wait for this to load. But that's why I'm up to make sure that thing loads, because then you don't want to get backed up if you want these things loaded.